Welcome back to the On Business podcast. With tons of experience in different industries in Canada and the United States, Danielle and Brandon give you real talk, no nonsense expert advice about running and owning successful companies. Here's your host, Danielle Jenkins and Brandon White.
It's a me thing.
I was just trying to make you laugh, but I used that one before. Danielle Jenkins, what's happening?
Hi, Brandon. I can't believe how close we are to the holidays. Like a couple weeks, really. Are you prepared for the holidays or Christmas?
No, when this comes out, it could be almost the holiday, or it could actually be almost near the first of the year when this comes out. It'll be 2 weeks away, 3 weeks away from Christmas. Yeah, it's crazy. It's time flies when you're
having fun.
having fun and
hard.
Running a business. You lose track. I actually totally spaced this week. I can't believe it's Friday. But anyway, today we are talking about 4 tips when you are fed up with the bullshit of your business. And you and I talked about this before, sort of developing this idea. I think one of the titles you had was Hitting Rock Bottom. And we talked about it and came up with this because we think it describes better what happens. And when you're running a business, there's just a lot of bullshit. You and I just talked, we in between recording for listeners, Danielle and I think we spent 12 minutes bitching about the bullshit. But it's just a fact of life. Like, there's bullshit in business. You got to do things you don't like to do. But sometimes you do get to a point where it's just, I hesitate to say rock bottom, but you're at the end of your wits with what you want to do. You're ready to sell the business or something. So today we're going to go through these 4 tips. You're leading us. What do we have as number 1?
All right. Number 1, when you are sick and tired of dealing with the bullshit in your business, you cannot bury your head in the sand. You need to deal with things head on. Burying your head in the sand will make the situation worse, will drag it out, delay the inevitable. You need to come up with a clear plan and a clear decision and deal with it as soon and as clear as possible.
I like that. I think it's really tough to tell people what they need to do. And it's even harder to tell people what they need to do when they're at the end. But I think what I get from our tip number 1 is just put something down on a piece of paper and start there so that you start to address it. You're not going to address it on day 1, everything, but you cannot ignore it. Eventually you will need to face it. And the sooner you do that, the better. So I totally agree. You've got to figure out within yourself how to not bury your head.
Yeah. If something feels wrong or someone feels wrong or something that's happening doesn't feel right, you have to make that decision and decide how you're going to handle it. Now, again, you can't bury your head in the sand. So you need to do that. It is hard, but you have to do it. Number 2, take accountability for your own actions, whether that is as owner, CEO, employee. In this case, we're talking about business owners. So you need to take accountability for your own actions when things like this go wrong, or when there's just an issue. I mean, it may not necessarily be that there's an issue, but just something doesn't feel right or you need to make a change. You need to take accountability for your actions or your, what you've contributed to this maybe problem or to this thing that needs to change, but then you need to take accountability for also what you're going to do about it.
I agree. And in my experience, sometimes I have kicked that down the road, which is sort of a combination of our number 1 tip and the number 2 tip, which is you don't want to bury your head in the sand and you need to accept responsibility. I think taking accountability or responsibility for it, even when it wasn't something that you did, but it could be one of your managers did or one of your employees did. At the end of the day, you just got to take it on the chin and say, I'm going to accept responsibility and we're going to run at this and we are going to figure out how to fix or mitigate the problems that it's caused.
Yeah, you have to, especially a CEO or owner, or the face of the business. I mean, there's times in my business, as much as my staff are great, there's screw ups, there's fuck ups, things happen. And every single time it burns me, but I can't blame an employee for screwing up. I have to take accountability for that. You know, I'm sorry that this happened. You know, we will work on doing additional training. We will work on dealing with this on our end. We're not just going to respond to our customer and say, well, sorry, my employee's an idiot today. We can't do that. So you have to take accountability for when things like this happen.
The only thing before we jump to number 3, I will add to that is that's helped me over the years is I've changed my mindset. So taking responsibility, I already take responsibility for the mistakes that people make before they make them because I expect them to make them. And they actually need to make them because if they don't make them, they don't learn. And then you need to micromanage everything as a business owner. And that is a dead end. You will be burnt. You will be at rock bottom. You'll be burnt out, not just from your business, but personally. So I think there's a mind shift if you can think about that you know they're going to make mistakes. You need them to make mistakes so that they learn. And the important part is teaching people to say, hey, look, you made a mistake. How are you going to mitigate it? How are we going to fix it? And let them come up with the problem. But it's that mind shift, because if you have the expectation that they're not going to mess up, and now you have to take responsibility as if this just came upon you, then you get emotional and it turns into just a terrible shit show.
Yeah, it does. It really does. With that, with your talk about mindset shift, my number 3 point is to stay positive and to show up no matter what. Because if you don't, you may as well just give up and just bury your head in the sand and call it quits. Staying positive and showing up no matter what.
How have you done that?
I'm going to be honest. There have been days, maybe even recently, where shit is crazy, you know, with business, whether it's employees, clients, whatever it could be. There's always going to be a small fire or a small issue. And there's been days where I wake up and I go like, I really don't want to deal with this today. And I just want to bury my head back in my comforter and go to sleep. But I still get up, I have my shower, I work out, I put my clothes on, put my makeup on, and I get to it. And I do it positively. I'm not going to show up to a meeting. And even though I'm pissed off about the last 2, 3, 4 days of bullshit that I've had to deal with, I'm not going to show up to a meeting and bitch and complain to my staff or my management about all of this. That's not going to solve anything. That's just going to put kind of a negative damper on everybody else. So, you know, you kind of got to fake a smile, remain positive. But then when I say show up, literally just showing up to deal with these problems, again, dealing with them head on, is going to, may seem slow. It may seem like it's not going to help, but it will help resolve the problem quicker. Rather than just brushing it off. If you don't show up, the problem's not going to get dealt with or get resolved. So you need to show up. If you don't, you're kind of waving that white flag and you're kind of surrendering to the problem. And that's just not going to solve anything.
I think that you need to figure out how to show up. So as an example, yesterday I had a meeting that I was dreading. There's a conflict issue with somebody, and I was dreading the meeting. I've been dreading the meeting all week. So, I am disappointed in the person, but angry about the situation. And I'm angry about the situation because I have to deal with it. And I feel like it's a waste of my time. I mean, this is just yesterday. So I kept playing in my head all morning, which was affecting my morning. How am I going to go into this meeting, one, with the right mindset so that I don't lose my shit? Which I rarely do, but I'm sort of I am at the end on this one. We've already gone through low medium on this one. We're were to basically high. And I was like, I just got to talk to someone. And then I thought, well, I'll just talk to Yvette. And then I was like, well, do I want to, Yvette runs a business too and has her own stuff. Like, am I going to put this on her? Right. And then it just kept compounding. And finally I said, I've got to talk to someone because I've got to let some of the steam off. Otherwise I'm rolling into this meeting head on. Like, and I think when you we're on number 3, right? Number 3, showing up. I think showing up in the right mindset is the key. Not only do you have to show up, but you got to show up correctly, because you show up to a meeting like that and you are on a roll, it's just not going to go well. And it went okay. It would have gone worse had I not talked to someone. So all I'm suggesting is for people is figure out how to get up, get out of bed, 1. And then 2 is how to talk to someone or whatever it is. It sort of reminded me of our mastermind that we're going to be starting next year. And you and I were joking, like, we just need it for ourselves. I mean, so if you have that outlet, that can help you show up, because it does force you to show up. And sometimes just talking to someone to sort of let the frustration out moves it a little bit out of the way so that you can move forward.
100%. And everybody has different outlets for things like that. Like you said, how you're going to show up. For me, if I need to kick ass in a day, feel good, feel confident, I have to get up. I have to put on my shoes, my nice clothes, my earrings, my makeup, and I have to walk in there. No matter how upset, pissed off, sad, defeated, whatever the feelings may be, that is how I show up and get going. That is kind of like my Rocky moment, you know, when he's like walking out to like kick butt. That's my moment. So everybody has their moments. I'm sure for you, it's like, you know, riding your bike, blowing off that steam, whatever it may be. So figure out what that release is to be able to still show up and kick butt and get through those problems. And with that, sorry. Go ahead.
One thing I'm going to add before you jump to 4 is you've got to figure out your own standard operating procedures.
Yeah.
Which really takes introspection and sort of moves us away from the business, but it's directly related to the business when you're running it. So I think these are the things that you've got to figure out so that you're not reacting and you're actually executing against some sort of plan. So that's all I'll add to that one.
Yeah, love that. And with that comes, and these all tie in together, which is really nice. But with that, my number 4 point is you really have to take one step at a time, with whatever could be the reason for you feeling like you're defeated and that you're just sick and tired of the bullshit in your business. You have to handle it one step at a time. Brandon added, you know, don't try to do or try to fix every single thing in an hour, in one day, at the beginning of the month, or whatever it may be. You need to take it one step at a time for yourself and for the business and for the problem.
Yeah, I think the analogy for me is something of how you build software. And when you build software, you may have a major bug or you may have a major feature that you want to build. You can't build the whole thing at once because it has so many implications for the actual software. It's the program itself. It could be in the back end, the front end, could be middle, could be also things that you connect to. The implications are very much like a business. You have a back end, you have a front end, you have employees, you have the product, you have all these things. So you really need to break it down into steps, because if you do not break it into steps, you will basically get back into the overwhelm is what happens. And then you're overwhelmed and you can't show up. You can't even figure out how to show up. You can't do all these things. So you've got to do one step at a time. And what it does for me is it brings your focus in. Even if you're dealing with just total bullshit in your business and you just say, hey, look, for the next hour, I am only going to deal with this. It's almost doing deep work on one issue. No phone, no Twitter, no effing email. Like sometimes I don't even have music on. I just sit in silence working on this. And you'll be amazed at how much work you can actually get done in 60 minutes on an issue if you break it down. Because once you tackle that one, if you can dissect it and say, okay, we're going to tackle this and then this and then this, then you start making progress, and that momentum changes your outlook. It changes everything. I think back to the episode that we recorded, which I think is the one before this, with how one picture can change everything for negatively, which if you're listening, you need to go back to that episode and listen to it. But when you were dealing with that crisis, really just break it down and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Step one. Step one was we're going to address the problem publicly. Step two is we're going to address the issues with Google reviews. Then we're going to do step three. And then it became manageable, because when you first happened to you, I remember getting a text from you, like, this is a total shit show. This whole thing happened, right? And basically at that moment you are overwhelmed, but then you take a breath, you break it down, you do one thing at a time. It's like tiny habits. One little thing leads to a bigger thing, and then you get momentum, and then you can tackle it. But listen, I think overall, having been in this running businesses and starting businesses and all of this thing for a long time, there's a lot of bullshit, man. Yep. There's a lot of bullshit from everything. There's just a lot of bullshit, and the rewards outweigh the bullshit in the end. But it is very easy to get depressed, upset, lost in the bullshit. And look, sometimes you're just tired of the bullshit and you just want to sell your business, which that's another topic and a whole nother thing when you get to that. But if you're not to that point yet, you just got to break it down. And sometimes you just need a break. So figure out what that blueprint for you to be done with the bullshit is, and one step at a time.
Love that. Perfect way to end it, Brandon. Now everybody go deal with your bullshit.
Do you have any tips that you have used, or skills or formulas or standard operating procedures, SOPs? We'd love to hear them. Drop us a line. Our email is in the show notes or description. Danielle, thanks for coming up with this topic and putting this together. And hopefully you're not going to deal with any bullshit over the holidays.
I hope not. Thanks, Brandon.
Bye, everyone.